Thanks for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. Straight to the market action of the day. It was a range-bound day of trade which saw the benchmarks beating the Monday blues. However, the Nifty is under 11,600 and the Sensex below 39,000. The broader markets underperformed the benchmarks. The mid-caps ending close to 1% lower. Infosys was the clear star of the day as the stock rallied 7% after reporting a strong first quarter. So Infosys there up by over 7%. But now to the issue that has been bothering markets and foreign portfolio investors in particular. We learned from sources the Finance Ministry, the Central Board of Direct Taxes and market regulator SEBI have all discussed the impact of the surcharge levied on FPIs. However, we understand no relief measure has been proposed just yet and that the Revenue Department has some reservations on a special carve-out for FPIs. Timsy joins us now with the details. Timsy, what are you picking up?
Well, that's right. What we understand from sources right now is the fact that Department of Economic Affairs, CBDT and SEBI are discussing the impact of the surcharge on FPIs which was announced in budget. Also, Revenue Department has certain reservations which it has discussed in these discussions. However, Revenue Department is very clear and they've told the Department of Economic Affairs also that there are certain apprehensions when it comes to having a special carve-out for FPIs because the category of individuals, HUFs and AOPs go together under several tax rules and laws in the Income Tax Act, and it will be a little difficult for the Revenue Department to have a carve-out. However, if they actually consider this proposal of having a carve-out, then government, to be precise Revenue Department, will also have to have a strict anti-abuse measure which would need to be followed, especially when it comes to surcharge on FPIs. So there are currently talks going on between the stakeholders, be it Revenue Department, be it CBDT, be it DEA or SEBI. However, there is no proposal on relief to be given which has been discussed. As of now, there is no such proposal on the table, but it's just impact analysis that the government is doing and they are just assessing few areas such as having a carve-out to which Revenue Department has raised apprehensions and it is not in favor of having a carve-out. Let's see what happens finally, whether government chooses amendments in the finance bill to announce a relief or whether government decides to leave it as it is. We'll keep you posted.
The ongoing trade tensions and weak global demand have taken their toll on India's exports for the month of June. Commerce Ministry data shows merchandise exports have dropped 9% in June to just over $25 billion. Imports also down 10% in June, but the deficit remains above $15 billion, even though it's down 8%. Oil imports were down 13% in June to just over $11 billion. And ahead of the festive season, gold imports have seen a sharp spike of 13%. The Commerce Ministry blames the base impact and weak global trends for the drop in exports, but this data does confirm that the economy is in the grip of a slowdown. So both export as well as import data are down for the month of June. Joining us now is Pranab Sen, the former chief statistician. Mr. Sen, thanks very much, sir. So for the month of June, both imports as well as exports down by about 9%. What do you make of this and what would you believe this tells us?
Well, as far as exports are concerned, our exports haven't been doing anything for a long time. So it goes up a little bit and then comes down a little bit. But it basically hangs around the annualized $350, $360 billion level. And this is pretty much at par with that. But it's the downturn in imports that's really more worrying, because what it's saying in effect is that domestic demand, which we already know was weak, is weakening further. And, oil imports are down 13%. And what it means is that non-oil imports would be down probably about 6 or 7%. Now, that's quite a substantial drop on what was already a weak import picture. So the overall story that has been coming for the last 3 quarters seems to be continuing now. And the likelihood is going to continue at least for another couple of quarters.
Yes, on that issue of the imports, and you pointed out oil imports are down 13%, but I also want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing happen, for instance, with the sector that is a proxy for the economy in a sense, auto. And we've heard from companies like Ashok Leyland today, shutting production down for 9 days on continued weakness in demand. Now, one was expecting that the budget would have provided the trigger, at least in the near term, given some fillip to both exports as well as domestic demand. But in light of what we're seeing today and in light of what was announced in the budget, do you believe that we're going to see any significant uptick in the next few months?
No, essentially what is happening is that the party which was going on since the post-demonetization period for the corporate sector in India, which is really the middle class and upper middle class in India, that party is coming to an end. Auto sales had actually reached levels which were really quite surprising. We are getting surprised at this 15-17% slowdown in auto sales. What should have surprised us was the 17-18% growth that had taken place the last couple of years. That was really quite surprising. So upper middle class incomes are taking a hit, and as far as the budget is concerned, there's nothing there for them.
All right, Dr. Sen, we leave it there. Always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us. The Federation of Indian Exporters has in fact called the slump in exports worrying and suggests that this reflects the worsening global scenario. The Federation has called on the government to provide easier access to credit and faster GST refunds as well, long-standing demands that continue to be raised by the export industry. Now, the slowdown in the auto sector is clear and present. Commercial vehicle maker Ashok Leyland has announced that its plant in Pantnagar will be shut from the 16th of July till the 24th, and that is due to weak consumer demand. CNBC-TV18 also learns from sources that Tata Motors will be shutting its plant for 2 days in July. Alicia joins us now with more. Alicia, so some manufacturers are resorting to production cuts, others are resorting to shutting down plants, like we've just heard from Ashok Leyland.
Weak rural consumer spending, a delayed and weak monsoon and the impact of increased axle load norms have led to commercial vehicle sales dropping to over 12% in the month of June. Now, most manufacturers are having to resort to production cuts to manage rising inventories, and the latest OEM to announce no production days is Ashok Leyland, which has said that it will observe no production activity for a period of 9 days from July 16 to July 24 at their Pantnagar facility in Uttarakhand, owing to weak demand and outlook from the industry. But Ashok Leyland is not alone in taking these production cuts. The country's biggest CV maker, Tata Motors, is also keeping its Pantnagar plant shut for 2 days this month. That will be July 13th and July 22nd. Now, the company has, however, said that there will be no closures at any other of the company's 6 plants this month. In a statement to CNBC-TV18, Tata Motors said that the overall CV industry demand has softened and that production plans at their manufacturing locations are on schedule but aligned to the market demand. Few days of the month, they said, are also being utilized for planned maintenance activities. The company, we believe, is also cutting production in a staggered manner in the passenger vehicle space to manage retail inventory. Now, Volvo Eicher Commercial Vehicles, a medium and light commercial vehicle player, told CNBC-TV18 that while the company is not shutting down on any day this month, they are adjusting the market-to-market demand and undertaking production cuts. Lastly, M&M, in an interview to CNBC-TV18 earlier, had indicated that they don't expect closures to the extent of 5 to 6 days as they saw last month, but that if they happen at all, they will not last as long as they did in June.
All right, Alicia, many thanks. As we pointed out, automakers continue to recalibrate their production plans. Now, investors punished the debt-ridden DHFL stock. This after the crisis-ridden mortgage lender reported a 2,200 crore rupee loss in Q1. But it was not really the earnings that ruffled feathers. The notes to accounts written by the management indicate that bad loans could increase and points out that various lapses in documentations of loans and questions the company's ability to stay afloat. In a statement, the company believes that it remains strong and solvent and is hopeful of a resolution, and I quote, without any haircut to lenders. Well, remember that debt resolution plan will have to be submitted to lenders by the 25th of this month. Now, Lata joins us now with more details on DHFL's troubles and if the company can dig itself out of the hole that it currently finds itself in. Lata.
Well, the numbers of about 2,200 crore losses for the fourth quarter and NPAs going from 0.96 to 2.74% is not what has disturbed the street. The 30% cut in the stock, or near 30%, is because of the notes to accounts, which is saying a few things. It says that the procedural lapses and the end-use question marks of some of its loans, which Cobra Post alleged, are still not entirely resolved, because replies are expected from some of the borrowers with respect to the end use, and they have not been received. We don't have any idea of how much is the amount of loans involved. With respect to intercorporate deposits, some of them have been converted to loans. Some of them, about 4,000 crore, have yet to be paid, but the company is expecting it. There are lacunae in some documents, which one of the notes to accounts acknowledges, to the tune of about 20,000 crore. The company says that no adjustments are needed, but we have only the company's word for it. With respect to some other loans, about 16,000 crore of loans, they have got interest payment checks of 1,875 crore, but they didn't bank them, obviously because they were not sure it would be honored. Now, taking into account this 16,000 crore and all their other developer and SRA loans of 34,000 crore, they have written the value down as fair value to 31,000 crore, and that 3,000 crore odd has been provided for. That accounts for the loss, the company says. But all this has been signed by the company and not the auditor, which is why probably the markets are worried as to what will the auditors say about these numbers. As well, the company says that its ability to go on as a going concern depends on further asset monetization and more money coming in from banks and or investors. That line also could have worried investors. DHFL has clarified, saying that the management notes actually show our intent to be prudent and conservative, and they say that they have withstood a lot of pressure and remained solvent. They have paid back 41,800 crore since September 2018 when trouble began, and that they are working closely for a resolution with the stakeholders. This clarification has come from DHFL. From the bankers, we hear that they are going to hold a larger meeting with mutual funds and NCD holders as well, because if there is a haircut to be taken, all those who have provided credit may be asked to take it. The last meeting was also held with mutual funds, but only some mutual funds. Now maybe the larger body of those who hold debentures will be called. Expectation is that a deal will be finalized by July 25th. And the audited reports are expected to be submitted on July 19th.
All right, Lata, thanks very much. Yes, indeed, all eyes on that audited result for DHFL, and also the possibility of them being able to close in on a resolution plan with bankers by the 25th of July. Yes, the latest, though, in the Bhushan Power and Steel case, the National Company Law Tribunal, that's the NCLT, has directed that the forensic audit report of the company be shared with JSW Steel. Now, remember, JSW Steel was the highest bidder for Bhushan Power with its 19,700 crore rupee resolution plan. Ashmit joins us now with the details of today's developments. Ashmit, does this mean that JSW Steel may develop cold feet given the fresh problems that have emerged for the company?
Well, are they developing cold feet? That's a question that they will have to answer. JSW will have to come out and answer. But there is definitely some cause of concern that we can say with some degree of certainty. Let's understand the perspective as far as today's developments are concerned. Keep in mind that it was in the month of April that NCLT had reserved its judgment with respect to JSW Steel's bid for 19,700 crore rupees for Bhushan Power and Steel. It's been pending for nearly 3 months now. And it is in this interim period that there has been an interesting development. In fact, happened very recently. Earlier in the month of July, we had PNB come out on July 6th to be specific, whereby PNB admitted that they had conducted a forensic audit, and that audit revealed that in fact there had been bank fraud, that as much as 3,800 crore rupees had been siphoned off by Bhushan Power and Steel. Subsequently, on July 13th, which is more recently, Allahabad Bank also came out and they said that we've done a forensic audit as well, and our auditors are telling us that as much as 1,800 crore rupees had been siphoned off by Bhushan Power and Steel. And it is in this perspective that today's petition of JSW Steel needs to be seen. JSW Steel had moved moved the NCLT, whereby essentially they were seeking copies of these very forensic audits. Now, what's interesting is that while they were seeking copies, the lenders were also present in court today. They said that they'd be more than happy to allow these copies of forensic audits to be served upon JSW Steel. And they added in lighter vein that as they would provide the copies as long as JSW Steel is not backing out. And to that, JSW Council responded by saying that they have no plans to back out so far. The operative word there being so far. So interestingly, as of right now, NCLT has allowed for copies of these forensic audit reports to be made available to JSW Steel, but certainly a cause of concern there for JSW Steel and its bid of 19,700 crores for Bhushan Power and Steel.
And a cause of concern for bankers, Ashmit, if indeed JSW Steel develops cold feet. Thanks very much for joining us. But more from debt resolution. Crisis-hit IL&FS has entered into an agreement with the secured lenders of 3 group entities. These pacts are a part of the group's resolution process and have helped these companies move from the amber to the green category. Yash is here with more. Yash, which are the 3 companies and how will these agreements impact them?
Well, IL&FS has informed the exchanges that the group has entered into an agreement and signed binding term sheet with the secured lenders of 3 of its entities, which essentially include Moradabad-Bareilly Expressway, Jharkhand Road projects, as well as West Gujarat Expressway. Now, the total debt when it comes to all these 3 entities put together is concerned, that figure stands at about 5,071 crore rupees, out of which 3,242 crore rupees is with the secured lenders and the balance 1,829 crore rupees is with unsecured lenders. Another move from the IL&FS group when it comes to looking at asset monetization and repaying its debt to the various secured lenders, including mutual fund players. As far as these 3 entities are concerned, talking about the first one, which is Moradabad-Bareilly Expressway, the total debt with that entity is about 1,567 crore rupees, with players like Bank of India, Bank of Baroda, L&T Infra Debt Fund, L&T Finance, L&T Infrastructure Fund having an exposure to that particular entity. Also talking about the second one, which is Jharkhand Road project, the total debt here is about 1,547 crore rupees again to players like India Infra Debt Fund, Aditya Birla Sun Life Mutual Fund, Aditya Birla Health Insurance, Capital Asset Fund. The third and the final entity, which is the West Gujarat Expressway, a smaller debt here comparatively, about 129 crore rupees, with players like L&T Infrastructure Finance Company as well as L&T Infra Debt Fund having an exposure there. Now, with this particular release and the term sheet which has been signed, these 3 entities will have to be moved to the green category from the amber category when it comes to assessment of the financial performance.
Well, in a bid to enable consumers to make informed choices, the food safety regulator, that's the FSSAI, has come out with draft labeling norms a few days ago. These rules make it clear that packaged foods must have nutritional information on the front of the pack, and food products with high sugar or fat should be color-coded. Now, FMCG companies are not happy about these rules, and some industry sources say nearly 70% of packaged food products could be labelled red if these draft rules are implemented. Priya Sheth joins us now with the new rules, draft rules, and their potential impact on companies and consumers. Priya, the FSSAI has put out the draft rules. Of course, this is a Gazette notification. Take us through the fine print of what these rules suggest and the implications.
Well, 10 days ago, the FSSAI issued draft labeling regulations, which essentially said that companies must declare nutritional information on the front of the pack, and also the foods which are high in fat, sugar as well as salt will have to be coded red or will fall under the red category, and that will have to be disclosed by the companies. Now, this essentially means that close to 70% of the packaged foods will fall under this category is what our sources tell us, but that's really the big cause of contention, and that's the reason why companies, FMCG companies, are very unhappy as far as these draft regulations are concerned. We understand from sources that they're all set to make a joint representation to the FSSAI on this issue. Now, what is really the impact of these regulations? Companies would have to change their product formulations for existing products as well as re-engineer future products to avoid being in this red category. And also, the discrimination between packaged foods as well as fresh foods which have the same fats, sugar as well as salt is another cause of concern for the companies going forward. But, as far as the main bone of contention is concerned, is the basis of the nutrient thresholds that the companies will have to adhere to, and those have been prescribed by the FSSAI in adherence with global standards. But are they applicable to the Indian dietary pattern is something that companies are still debating upon. But of course, there are a series of nutrients that need to be disclosed on the top of the pack, and these include calories, saturated fat, added sugar, trans fat, as well as the sodium per serve. Now, on all these suggestions, we really reached out to the food regulator, and what the FSSAI really told us is that consumers must make informed choices, and that's the reason these draft regulations are being proposed. They're trying to address concerns of companies on these issues, and we'll get back to them, depending on what kind of feedback they receive from the industry. We reached out to the top industry players as well. HUL said that, well, these changes are progressive, but there is need for some flexibility to encourage product differentiation. Nestle India also said that while these regulations are still in the draft stage, they are placing high priority on nutritional information, and at this point in time, Nestle is already having some sort of front labeling as far as some of their products are concerned. It's a space that we will continue to wait and watch for. Depending on the feedback that companies give the FSSAI over the next 30 days, there will perhaps be some consultative process that will go forward, going ahead.
All right, Priya, appreciate you joining us. Priya, taking us through some of the highlights of the draft notification. In fact, for the benefit of our viewers, I've been going through the draft regulations and what the government or the FSSAI, the food regulator, is proposing. For instance, if there are fortified foods, fortified with things like iron or other vitamins and minerals, etc., then they will have to carry the mark of Sampurna Poshan Swasth Jeevan. It's quite a mouthful, but that's the mark that they will have to carry. Organic food will have to carry the mark of Jaivik Bharat. Pan masala and of course supari, etc., will have to continue to carry the usual disclaimers that they're injurious to health. If you do have artificial sweeteners as part of the product, then you will have to make disclosures and also the caveats that these are not recommended for children, etc. Labeling of infant milk and substitute and infant food, of course, to continue to carry the copy that mother's milk is the best for your baby, etc. So those are again some of the categories that the FSSAI is sort of bringing into the fold in terms of additional information or new marks and codes that they will give out for fortified food, organic food, etc. To take the discussion forward, I'm joined by Subodh Jindal, the President of All India Food Processors Association, Harish Bijur, founder of Harish Bijur Consultants, Anil Talreja, partner at Deloitte, and A.K. Tyagi, Executive Director at Haldiram Snacks. Priya also here with us because she's been going over those draft regulations. Harish, this back and forth with the FSSAI has been on since 2015. This is a draft that has been put out by the food regulator. And on the face of it, it makes sense that consumers must have the ability to make informed choices. Manufacturers must put the required information, whether it's on the front, nutritional information, the FSSAI says now should be on the front of the pack. And of course, all the other caveats, disclosures, etc., should also be part of labeling. Now, this traffic light system of color coding according to the fats that a product has or the sugar content, etc., it's voluntary. It's in the UK, has been in place since 2013. Do you believe that that's the way forward here too?
Yes, I think so, because, this has taken a while coming, because we're talking about amendments to the Act of 2011. And out here, what is being pointed out is that there are 2 or 3 or 4 items which are red flag items. And the red flag items on health are calories. Energy can be positive, energy calories can be negative. The second is saturated fat. The third is trans fat. And the fourth is added sugar. Because, that seems to be enemy number 1. And of course, sodium, per serve, which is really talking about, India is becoming the capital of some of the lifestyle diseases like diabetes and hypertension. Can we take a step back and do things differently? The point seems to be that what used to be in small print is likely to be in big print. What used to be in big print is likely to be with logos and with visual icons. But at the end of the day, my worry is it should not complicate things. It should simplify, because only 2% of people read packaging. And That is a very small number.
Yeah, but Subodh, as Harish was pointing out, that this is a step in the right direction. This is not something that is new. Industry has been consulting with the food regulator on a lot of these issues. Now, what is it that you object to specifically, and what is it that you would like changed, and why?
Thank you, CNBC, for giving this opportunity to be on a discussion. You see, this issue is continuing for many, many years, and making the basis of the salt, sugar and fat content to depict a traffic lighting is absolutely an unscientific way of doing something. You see, how do you lay a parameter that consumption of salt, sugar, fat is such a big variable? It varies with age. A 5-year child has a different consumption level to an 18-year-old or to a 60 years old. It depends on lifestyle. It depends whether you're a sportsman or athlete, whether you are a sedentary person or you're an active person. It depends on your medical prognosis. It depends on so many other things. So how do you fix one parameter, which means you will have to take on some basis, which will be only a calculated basis, that this is the parameter level which we want. How do you decide it for everybody? It depends on the region, climate, on the location, on so many other things. So we have to do that.
I'm not going.
Take the help
I'm interrupting
of a theoretical
you,
parameter.
I'm interrupting.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm interrupting you because the FSSAI in its notification has given that calculation. It's very complicated so I'm not going to be able to compress that into this 30-minute program.
But that is absolutely a theoretical calculation on the. Please.
Okay. You've made your point. I'll come back to you. Anil, let me bring you into the conversation. You heard there from Subodh Jindal basically saying that, look, this is unscientific. It doesn't take into consideration age, lifestyle, region, climate, and this is a one-size-fits-all approach that won't work and hence should not be taken forward.
That's correct. Actually, if you see, on one hand, this is a way of communicating awareness to the consumer. I think the government's intention is to make the consumer aware of what is the person eating. But on the other hand, I think, we can't have traffic lights which are one way. You have to also appreciate the fact that there are several health patterns, culture, weather conduciveness. And that actually is one important determination factor before you come and just blow lights to an individual. Plus, one more important thing is how many percentage of the population really reads or looks at the information which is given in a very microscopic manner in a particular product. That's an important fact that needs to be communicated, that before you change anything, recognize that how many people actually read before they eat.
Yeah. No, I think Harish gave us that statistic that it's a minuscule 2%, but that's not the point. The point is that if you make it, there also has to be an advocacy campaign that the FSSAI must run, perhaps also in consultation with industry, because people should know what they're consuming. I mean, for instance, the best buy date or the expiry date is something that people now regularly look for when they go out there and buy food. If you have a certain allergy, you want to know if a product contains peanuts or something that you might be allergic to. So I think that's a step in the right direction. Now, how much is too much? Are you complicating labeling norms? And, are global standards aligned to the Indian reality? I think those are questions that need to be asked. But let me go across to Mr. Tyagi. A.K. Tyagi, where do you believe that there needs to be some flexibility? And overall, the manner in which the FSSAI is putting forward the changes that it hopes to bring forth through this draft notification, what are the key problems that you have with this as the ED of Haldiram snacks?
Considering Indian food industry, most of the items will come under the red category. Even milk and fruit juices also come under the red category. As the fat content in the milk and sugar content in the juices is higher, as the standard prescribed by FSSAI. So I think we can't copy paste this rule from the outside. We have to consider the Indian consumer also. So there is need to do the brainstorming between FSSAI and industry,
so Mr.
and between this total.
Okay. I thought this brainstorming has been happening for the last few years, sir. I thought this brainstorming has been happening for the last few years, but basically, Mr. Tyagi, is the Haldiram Bhujia going to fall under the red category or not?
No, it is not a matter of Haldiram Bhujia only, it is a matter of the milk also, which is a very healthy item. You can't live without the milk. You can't live for the juices. We have some food also. If you see the Haldiram,
that was a lighter comment, sir. That was I know you're taking this very seriously, but that was a lighter comment.
Haldiram already started some healthy food, just like the roasted chana, just like a diet murmura. And we have also started the sugar-free sweet with the help of stevia. But if you see at our showroom, both type of the product are available. But the sale of these type of the product with less sugar and roasted type of the item is around 5% of the total sale. So we cannot change the habit of the Indian consumer.
My colleague Priya is also waiting by. Priya, just a very quick question. You know, from my reading of the draft notification, things like milk powder, didn't they fall in the exempt category?
Yes, there are some products that have been fallen under the exempt category, and there are separate notifications and regulations for those products. But of course, as Mr. Tyagi said about, most of the products, including sweets as well as snacks, are under the category which will be monitored under a nutrient threshold. In fact, I have a question for Mr. Tyagi on these lines. So you said that about 5% of your products are diet food products, and that's the demand that you're seeing for these snacks. Wanted to understand that if these draft regulations are implemented in their current format, do you think there will be an expansion of this diet category? Do you think that your core category will shrink considerably?
According to our experience, this diet category is also growing. But at the same time, the traditional category is also growing because rural is a big opportunity.
Okay, Harish, you've heard what our panel has to say, and it boils down to giving the consumer information, but also letting the consumer make a decision. And the conflict now seems to be: are we overburdening the consumer with too much information? Are we now confusing the consumer with information? Because as our panel is pointing out, and we will have to see or hear from the regulator if that is indeed going to be the case, but industry seems to suggest that 70% of what is out there in packaged food will carry the red mark if this goes through. So what is the best way forward, Harish?
There have been some very good points coming out on this debate, today. But the point is very simple. I think we have complicated packaging, and we have complicated the legalese on packaging. So much so that everything becomes in fine and finer print. So all of a sudden, this traffic lighting seems to be a good move, theoretically, fundamentally because the moment there is a red, orange, green, and maybe white tomorrow and a black to say not fit for human consumption, what is going to happen is people are going to sit up and take note. But water will find its own level. Like on cigarette packaging, you have cigarette smoking is injurious to your health, but everybody continues to smoke. But at least there is an informed choice being made by people. The red, orange, and green is a great way of simplifying choices and saying that, are you a red kind of a person, orange kind of a person, or a green kind of a person? The second important point is the moment legislation of this kind on packaging comes up, marketers themselves, manufacturers themselves are going to question their products deeper. Because, all of a sudden the government is sitting up and taking note, the regulator is sitting up and taking note, the marketer and manufacturer also has to sit up and take note. And therefore you already have it happening. You have chocolates being launched by the biggest with 30% less sugar. You're going to have all of that. But at the end of the day, the taste of the people will reign supreme, and people will continue eating what they think is tasty. Never mind health, never mind everything else. But at least the government becomes the watchdog, the regulator becomes a watchdog, and that's a good thing to happen. I wouldn't rob the FSSAI of all credit. I do believe they have done a lot of thinking. there needs to be a tweaking needs to be done, but I'm sure that will be done for sure.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. As I said, that this has been, on the table now for the last several years. And I know for a fact there has been a lot of stakeholder consultation on each of these issues. For instance, there was there was the possibility of a fat tax, but that hasn't come through. At least it's not in the draft regulation. Mr. Jindal, I'll give you the final say, sir. This is the draft notification. Obviously, comments and have been asked for by the FSSAI. You've already told us that you're against the lighting system, the traffic light system, but what will be the transition time, whatever be the changes, whether these norms are tweaked and finally we see a revised version of this draft notification, what will be the transition time for the industry, especially the MSMEs?
I think, ma'am, the question of transit time comes much later. The question is first, what is our objectivity, as one of the honorable panelists also said. Now, if I ask a simple question, is butter bad or good? Who will answer that? Butter is not bad or good, it is the way we use it that is bad or good. How much I eat is bad or good. With what I am eating or when I am eating, how many times a day I am eating, and whether my medical prognosis allows me to eat or not. Butter is not bad or good. So we're putting a mark on a product which is absolutely unscientific. We should first answer that question and only move further. Otherwise, moving further will itself be derogatory. Okay?
Okay, so you've made your position very clear, and I would imagine that this is what is going to be presented there
and
by
we are with the regulator industry. And we are with, ma'am, we are with the regulator on the nutrition chart, and if they want it to be on the front of the label, industry is ready to do that. But industry does not think it's viable to take on themselves something which is unscientific and not implementable. As simple as that.
Okay, so no problem with what the FSSAI is suggesting to have the nutritional information on the front of the pack as opposed to the back.
Sure.
But serious problem the FMCG business has with the color coding, and that is what we've heard on the... That is what we've heard on the panel. Subodh Jindal, Harish Bidur, Anil Talreja and A.K. Tyagi, thanks very much for joining us here on the CNBC-TV18 special discussion as we examine the draft notification put out by the food regulator, which proposes a traffic light system of color coding for packaged food and packaged products.
Welcome back here with India Business Hour Plus. The big corporate story this evening, the Indigo stock continues to be under the pump. Though the scrip managed to end the day still 1.7% in the green today, the promoter spat at the airline has intensified. Indigo Group head Rahul Bhatia today said that the foundational structure of the airline protects it from turbulence in difficult times. Now remember, this comes 2 days after Rakesh Gangwal, the second promoter, sought Prime Minister Modi's intervention while making it clear that he did not want to buy controlling stake in the airline. Sonia Shenoy is here with the latest updates. Sonia, the war of words clearly continuing.
There has been a lot of mudslinging going on, and the latest in that is that the Bhatia Group's IGE has set the record straight. Rahul Bhatia says that Rakesh Gangwal limited his financial risks. In fact, in a letter he says, and I quote, the Indigo's foundational structure protects the company from turbulence and difficult times. The IGE Group is the one that underwrote the financial risk of Indigo. Remember, this is Mr. Bhatia sort of getting back at the allegations that were made by the Rakesh Gangwal Group. The IGE Group says that IGE played the most significant role in nurturing Indigo to what it is today. Rakesh Gangwal was completely missing in action during the turbulent period of a fledgling airline, and Kapil Bhatia and Rahul Bhatia extended personal loans to Indigo for diverse financing needs. So basically they're trying to say that at the insistence of Mr. Gangwal, it was taken public in 2015, but a lot of the financial burden was borne by IGE itself. Well, because of all that to and fro, the stock was very volatile today. It started off with a cut, but now it's recovered just a tad bit.
All right, Sonia, thanks for that. Now, staying with the aviation space, Jet Airways Committee of Creditors is expected to hold its first meeting tomorrow. Sources say the committee will begin work on preparing the expression of interest document to invite new investors. Ritu Singh is here with more details. Ritu, what have you picked up from your sources and what can we expect tomorrow?
The Committee of Creditors for Jet Airways will be holding its very first meeting under the IBC route that the lenders have chosen to take on the 16th of July. Do remember, Jet was admitted into the bankruptcy courts on the 20th of June. But instead of waiting for the 180-day timeline that is usually allowed under IBC, banks are looking to fast-track the resolution process and complete it within 90 days. Therefore, in the very first meeting, we're given to understand they're looking to finalize the expression of interest document so that they're able to start the process of inviting bids for Jet Airways at the earliest possible. Also on the agenda is deciding the quantum of funds that will be required in the interim before a buyer is found, and this money will be raised as priority debt either from the existing consortium of lenders or from outside. Also, the constitution of the Committee of Creditors itself and the voting right, etc., which is usually on the agenda, is also something that will be taken up. Do remember, there's 8,500 crores of debt that we know Jet Airways has to an SBI-led consortium, but the overall claims, including those from the operational creditors, are still being verified by the resolution professional and will be made public very soon.
Okay, so we should have at least some clarity on where things have reached after the meeting tomorrow. Thanks, Ritu, for joining in. We'll, of course, have Ritu back tomorrow with the details. But moving on, Business Optimism of India Inc. is at a 10-quarter low in the July to September quarter. That's according to the Dun & Bradstreet Business Optimism Index, which measures the pulse of the business community by surveying 400 companies across sectors to review their optimism across 6 key parameters. I spoke to Manish Sinha of Dun & Bradstreet to find out the sectors where optimism has been declining. Here are some excerpts of that conversation.
The Business Optimism Index is just an index. So to understand it, you would compare it with the same number the previous quarter. From 70, it used to be 78 in the previous quarter. And actually the same quarter the previous year was as high as 81. So the important thing is the time series, and the fact is that it's been declining. The optimism is declining when it comes to the amount of sales that they're going to do. It's declining in terms of the amount of profit that they think they're going to make. Similarly, down in terms of selling prices, order book, and employment that they plan to actually generate. The only place where it's actually not declining is in terms of inventory they expect to have, but even there it's only flat. There's 3 sectors that we actually feel the optimism is the lowest. It's definitely low in consumer non-durables, and it's definitely low in the basic goods. When we say basic goods, we're actually talking about the end products that the customers buy. In the case of construction, we see a positive movement in terms of level of selling price that they expect to get and the level of stock, but a negative movement in terms of new orders that they've received. So some sectors quite negative, some sectors are a little bit positive.
Situation in Bihar is grim. Flood has hit 8 districts, claiming 4 lives and affecting 18 lakh people. State Chief Minister Nitish Kumar has conducted an aerial survey and has also held a high-level review meeting to take stock of this rescue and relief operations. CNN News 18's Prabhakar Kumar filed this report.
Yeah, the flood situation in Bihar is getting only grimmer by each passing day. It is because of the continuous rain which is happening in the northern part of Bihar, especially the Kosi and the Mithilanchal region of Bihar, and also in the hills of Nepal. Remember, Bihar is hit by flood not only because it rains heavily here in Bihar, but also mainly because it rains heavily in Nepal, and the rivers which actually flows in from Nepal into India brings huge quantity of water which actually causes flood in the entire Kosi belt and the Mithilanchal belt of Bihar. This year, almost till today, around 35 deaths have been reported, and 8 to 10 districts of the northern region of Bihar, that is the districts adjoining Nepal, they're all reeling under flood water. The worst affected are the Purnia, Katihar, Darbhanga, then Sitamarhi and Samastipur and Motihari are the districts which are actually reeling under water. Madhubani and Sitamarhi, of course, are one of the worst affected ones. And the government has swung into action. The relief camps have been set up. The community kitchen concept has been introduced this time, where the people whose villages are being flooded, they are taken to the high places, and the community kitchen is being run by the government. The NDRF, the SDRF team, the State Disaster Relief Force, they're all there on the ground to ensure that people are not drowned and they are taken to the higher places. But the problem is that as it continues raining, and as we are talking, it's still raining in the northern parts of Bihar. So that actually worsens the situation. It would be a heavy task and the uphill task for the government actually in coming 1 month or so to handle this kind of catastrophe, especially in the northern part of Bihar, where thousands and lakhs of people would be affected, and they would be all dependent on the government relief being carried out on the ground.
All right, so from Bihar to Assam, where the flood situation has worsened, with the death toll rising to 11, around 26 lakh people across 31 districts have been affected by the floods. Communication between upper and lower Assam has also been affected. Prime Minister Modi spoke to the state's chief minister earlier during the day to take a stock of the crisis. CNN News 18's Karishma Hasnat filed this report earlier.
Well, the death toll in floods and landslides in Assam has crossed 11. Till last reports came in from Assam State Disaster Management Authority, 9 people died in floods and 2 in landslides. Over 26.5 lakh people have been affected across 28 districts of Assam. Barpeta has been the worst affected, with over 7 lakh people displaced. Over 3,000 villages have been inundated by the swirling waters of the Brahmaputra. The Brahmaputra and its tributaries, remember, are still flowing above the danger level. In other places, roads, embankments and bridges have collapsed. In Kaziranga National Park, 90% of the park is underwater, with as many as 155 anti-poaching camps being submerged. Animals are being affected. Many animals are being run by speeding vehicles as they cross over the national highway to the higher reaches. Time cards have been issued. People are those displaced have been taking shelter in as many as 85 relief camps. Relief distribution centers have also been opened where people can avail food and other essentials. The government is working on a war footing. The civil administration, with the help of SDRF and NDRF teams, is carrying out rescue and relief operations. The army is also seen lending a helping hand. Army personnel we're seeing carrying the elderly people and children on their backs, helping them to waddle across knee-deep water. But the Brahmaputra and its tributaries are still flowing above the danger mark, and the situation seems to be quite grim.
Okay, so on both these states, the situation is very grim, and the state governments as well as the centre is taking note of the situation and trying to come up with rescue efforts. Moving on, the political crisis in Karnataka could end this week. The House Speaker has announced that a trust vote will be held on Thursday. 14 MLAs of the current ruling coalition have submitted their resignations. The Speaker, who has refused to accept them as things stand, some of them have moved the Supreme Court, questioning the delay by the Speaker to take a decision on their resignation. Mugdha Warrior is here with the latest. Mugdha, floor test on Thursday. Who has the numbers now?
The political drama in Karnataka will all boil down to the trust vote that will take place in the Assembly on Thursday at 11 a.m. In fact, both sides, which is the BJP in the opposition and the Congress-JDS coalition government, had asked the Speaker to hold a trust vote as early as Monday, but the Speaker seems to have held off the trust vote till the Supreme Court hearing that is scheduled on Tuesday on the matter of the resignations of rebel MLAs. Remember that 10 rebel MLAs had moved the Supreme Court earlier, citing a delay in the acceptance of the resignations by the Speaker, while over the weekend we saw 5 more rebel MLAs also move the Supreme Court. Now, last week the Supreme Court had ordered a status quo on the resignations and had said that the Speaker cannot decide on the resignations or disqualifications sought by Congress and JDS of these rebel MLAs till the hearing on Tuesday. And how that Supreme Court hearing plays out will have, a big impact on that trust vote on Thursday. It has to be seen whether these MLAs will be disqualified or will resign. And if the 16 MLAs do resign, then the size of the House would come down from 224 to 208, and the Congress-JDS coalition would be reduced to 100, as low as 100, while BJP would be comfortable at 105, which would be the halfway mark and the majority mark in the House. So really the numbers not looking very good for the coalition government, and the fate of the Karnataka government rests on the trust vote on Thursday.